Hey there, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to a new video. For today's video I want to put some of my propagations and one of my plants on moss poles. And while doing that I thought it would be fun to share a little bit about my experience growing plants on moss poles. So that's what we are going to do today. So the three plants that I want to put on a moss pole are one, my Philodendron Esmeraldense. All of these three plants are ones that I had on moss poles originally, but they all kind of went downhill, so I took propagations from them and let it root again, and yeah, now I do want to put them on moss poles again. So yeah, the first one is my Philodendron Esmeraldense. Like a while ago I had like a big moss pole domino effect situation happening, and I just noticed that this new leaf is quite some, I don't know if it really wants to show, but it has quite some damage, and I just noticed it now. Like at the moment when all the moss poles fell over, I immediately checked it and I thought like all the plants came out of it well, but now I saw that one and I was like, oh, there was a plant that got damaged from it. Over here I have propagations from my Philodendron Lupinum. There are quite a bit of propagations in here and I do see a lot of roots, so I am curious how many are rooted of them. I also see quite some slimy situation on the ends of the stem, so maybe I should also immediately chop that because that doesn't look well. They are in here for a really long time though. And the last one is the Philodendron Sodiroi. So a while ago I did check on these propagations, and back then there were only 3 that are rooted, so I'm not sure if there are in the meanwhile more of them rooted into there, but I still think it's just 3 of them, which is nice because I did want to put three propagations on a moss pole. So yeah, which one should I start with? I think I will go and start with the Lupinum, so I will put these ones to the side. I am quickly going to grab a tissue to put these ones on, and I also need to find my snipper thingy so I can chop a little bit off the ends from it. Okay, first we'll take this one out. Once you like take it out of the water, you don't really see that slimy situation anymore, but maybe I can show it on camera. I think this one is a little bit worse than the other one. Yeah, there's definitely some, like you can see at the bottom of those stems. So I'm definitely going to take a little chip from this. So quickly do that. When I originally had the Lupinum on a moss pole, I also had a lot of propagations on there. I'm really not sure how much, but definitely a lot. So, well, it looks like all of these propagations, oh no, this one not, this one didn't root. So yeah, I will just continue this and I will immediately start a little bit about the background on how I got into growing plants on moss poles. And I think I've been growing plants on moss poles for 2.5 years now, maybe up to 3 years, and it all started when I saw a video of Sydney Plant Guy. I think for a lot of people he is the one that maybe inspired you to, whoa, it's quite a big wood, but that he's the one that maybe inspired a lot of people to grow on moss poles. So yeah, when I saw a video of him I was so impressed by all of those big plants that I was like, oh my god, I really would love to have some of those really big leaf plants. So back then I already had a lot of plants, but not really like the rare ones and not that much of philodendrons that I had. So I think the first plant that I put on a moss pole was my Philodendron Glorious and Philodendron Splendid, and those are also the 2 moss pole plants in my collection that have the biggest leaves. So once I saw how those plants were started to root in the moss pole, I was getting so excited that I did want to put more of my plants on moss poles. And yeah, back then I was just buying so many plants and I really extended my collection a lot back then, and I just felt so motivated to put like all of my climbing plants on moss poles, so that's kind of what I did. And I think at a certain point I had 32 yeah, I think 32 plants on mosspoles. Like, I can't even imagine it right now. Like 32, that's a whole lot of mosspoles you need to keep on top of watering. And yeah, that's also something which I did started to notice, that it was a lot to keep on top of. Like 32 plants that need to constantly be watered. And I think that's also immediately like my first con about growing on mosspoles, that you really need to keep on top of keeping that mosspole moist. And it's not necessarily that it takes a lot of time to do it. It's just like filling the bottle with water and putting it on and let gravity do its thing. But you do need to be aware of it, that you don't let it get too dry. And yeah, that was something which I did started to notice, that some of the poles I let them get a little bit too crispy, or sometimes I still have that I put a bottle on and I really don't look after it anymore, and then 2 days later I want to check up on it again, and then I did saw that the bottle didn't start dripping water, so there was like still a bottle of water on it. So yeah, in that time the pole was just getting like completely crisp. So yeah, I think that's just my first con of growing on mosspoles, that you just really need to be on top of keeping those mosspoles moist. But like I said, it doesn't take a lot of time, it's just that yeah, you do need to check on it a lot. Okay, so I took off all of the propagations. I think there was only one that wasn't rooted, and that was just like a stem without a leaf. So there's a lot of propagations. I haven't even counted it, but I think definitely 10, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I think. So I'm not sure if I want to really put all those 12 propagations on a mosspool. I think first time around I had maybe like 7 or 8. So I'm just going to take the ones that I like the best and put those on some mosspoles. So I'm quickly going to look and see which ones I like the most. This one is, oh, this is the one that was rooted a lot. And this one. Okay, so I think these are the ones that I'm going to put on the mosspole. So over here I already have 3 mosspoles that I am reusing, because these are all mosspoles that have been originally used for plants, but probably also from like the Lupinum and Esmeraldense, and I took quite a lot of plants off mosspoles this year. So I think I now also immediately want to start with my second con about mosspoles, because like I said, sometimes I have had it happen that mosspoles got a little bit too crispy, and I have done a couple chop and extends at this point, and for the bottom proportion most of the times I really opened up the mosspole to see how the root system was looking, and just to take propagations from it. And what I have noticed is that sometimes there was some dry rot going on, so then you had like the root system, and then especially like the ends of the roots were just rotten, but still there was still like always a decent root system to still like continue growing that plant without getting it to like re-root in the first application. So yeah, there's still like an advantage, like even to you have maybe have a little bit of root rot going on. Like the plant was still like well enough to immediately like put it in the plant with just like chopping off the bits of dry rot. But I also took some plants apart there where the root system was still looking really well, even to let them get a little bit too crispy. Let me see. I'm going to put this little layer at the bottom. And the first con that I have is that mosspoles can get pretty messy. Or not the mosspole in itself, but just like the surroundings of the mosspoles. Like especially if you get them that get a little bit dry, and if you do like the scrunch test, how Sydney plant guy calls it, then yeah, there are definitely some pieces of moss that are falling next to the pot or just like on the floor. So yeah, many times I do notice that there has been quite some moss collecting like on the places where I keep my plants, but yeah, it's not that of a big deal though. You can just like vacuum it and it's all okay. But yeah, if you like consider it with just like your plants that you just like have in a pot, or like with like a coco coir pole, those definitely don't get that messy. So yeah, that's just a little con of the mosspole situation. And I was thinking about another con, but at the same time I'm not sure if it's like fair to say, because The one which I wanted to also point out is that especially if they get taller and they fall over and you have like more moss poles, then it literally creates like a domino effect. Like I had that a while ago and I was quite shocked when I noticed it, because I put my daughter to bed and I was laying next to her in the dark, and I was looking at the wall at like the bench where I have like a lot of my big plants, and I was looking at it and I was like, this doesn't look right. I just saw like completely white wall and I was like, this is not okay. So I immediately hopped out of the bed and I looked, and probably the melanoquisum fell over, like the biggest one, and it fell to the left, so it took all the plants with it. So that was quite a shocking thing to notice, and luckily, like I said at the beginning, there wasn't really that much damage on the plants, like probably only the Esmeraldense. So yeah, and probably it was because it was really windy that day and the window was still open, so yeah, just the wind in itself blowed that pole, turned that pole over. But like I said, I don't know if it's really fair to say, because I think like if you have those plants on just like a cocoa core pole or just like a wooden stick or something, then I think the same thing will happen. So I'm not really sure if it's like a fair comment to say. Because one of the pros that I do find with moss poles, that if I've potted this one up, I can just take it by the moss pole and hold it at the moss pole. And I do have now 2 plants on like a cocoa core pole, but I never dare to like take that plant, just take it by the cocoa core pole and take it out of the pot, because then definitely the whole thing is going to be falling apart. So yeah, in that sense, moss poles are definitely way more sturdier in the pot than like a cocoa core pole do. So that's definitely a pro of the moss poles, the DIY moss poles. I still have 2 left and it's already getting a little bit crowded in here. Maybe I should take this one out for a bit, because I also don't really like how this one is looking. This one is looking pretty nice. And another thing about the moss poles is that it can take quite a bit of maintenance to like keep it looking nice, do like the chop and extend, make the moss poles. And I personally don't really mind to make the moss poles, but like keeping on top of like the chop and extends can be like a little bit overwhelming, especially if you have like a lot of moss poles. Like currently I also need to do like a lot of chop and extends, and yeah, it does take up a little bit of time, so that's also which you kind of need to keep in mind if you do want to start growing on moss poles, that like once it's ready for a chop and extend, that it does take up some of your time to do that. And like if you've done it like a couple times, then you do get handier with it, so that's also a thing that's worth mentioning. These words are so delicate. Okay, so this is how it is looking now. I'm not sure how many I placed in there. I think like maybe 8 or something. So I think I'm also happy with the amount that I have in here. So let me see if all the roots are like going to get submerged. Yes. Okay, so now I'm just going to fill up this spot. So I think I'm happy with how this is looking. I always try to do, if I have like the back side where the septies are, to really keep the plant like centered on top and the front. But I have noticed that I really went a little bit far on this side to the back. But yeah, there were just so many on there, so it's kind of a bit like survival of the fittest. Like when I had it on a moss pole before, I think it was already, I think somewhere around 60-70 centimeters, at least for 2 shoots. Some of the rest were like farther on the bottom. But yeah, I did an extension on the previous one, and I'm still not sure what happened with it. It's just started to get a lot of yellow markings, and it didn't look well anymore, so I was a little bit bothered by the way that it was looking. So yeah, I'm happy that I have it on a moss pole again, because like the Philodendron Lupinum, if this one matures, it's like completely changes its shape and texture. Like now it has like kind of bit of like heart-shaped leaves with like a velvet texture. but once it matures it gets like a different shape. I'm not sure how I would call that shape. And also for the texture, it loses like that velvet sheen and gets more of like a glossy sheen. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. But yeah, before I had it on a moss ball, like there wasn't any signs of maturing. So yeah, I'm curious how it will go this time around, because yeah, I think it would be really cool to have this one growing to maturity. So yeah, this one is ready. I will do one more little close-up from how it is looking. So there are a lot of new leaves on the way. So yeah, this is for the first one. I'm going to shower it afterwards and give it a watering. Okay, then I think for the next one we are going to do the Philodendron Sodiroi. So let me see which of the ones have rooted. Yeah, this one for sure. There are actually quite a lot of roots. So here I already have one with a lot of roots. And already one new leaf and another one on the way. So for this one, also a lot of roots and also 2 new leaves. This one is also in here for quite a long time. Well, I do see from compared to the last time that I've checked that there are definitely some roots growing on the other propagations. It is still like a really shallow roots, so I'm just gonna put these ones in here again so they can root a little bit further. And at least I have 3 propagations that I can put on here. Because for some plants I really like to have like a minimum of 3. For some also, not like for the Splendid and the Glorious, I just have like 1 plant on there, and like the Milano Chrysom. But it has a little bit of no buggies. Okay, so 3 really big propagations. Okay, so for the Majestic, I'm also going to put all of these plants in the same size pots, and especially if I put like propagations on a moss ball for the first time, I do always like to go with this size and this kind of pot. These are orchid pots, and what I really like is that they have like this elevated part in the middle. So it's really nice because the moss ball fits like perfectly on that elevation. So it creates even more stability. Yeah. I think like even if you don't have that, then it also is really sturdy, but this makes it a little bit more sturdy. So also a little layer. So. Okay, so let me quickly position these ones in here, and then I want to mention another thing. This one is growing a little bit. Like, do you see that? Completely is going to the side, so I'm gonna place it in there like so. I'm really happy to see this one just in my collection again, because I do think it's a really pretty philodendron. And for this one, I'm not really sure why I took it off the moss ball. I think also didn't look that well anymore. Okay, so I almost have this one done. The only thing which I really want to do is like give it a good tippy tap. So the reason I think it's really important to give it like a good tippy tap is to get like all the pieces of substrate into the middle of the moss ball, like to those little squares. Like I think for example, if you have Sydney Plant Guy, he uses like such a chunky airway mix that he just flips the ball on the side. Yeah, just I can't come up with a name. Just on the other side, and then he just fills it up and put it in a pot like that. But since the airway mix that I'm using are like really small particles, so I tried it at the beginning, but it was just like, what am I doing? So what I'm doing now is just like really give it like good tippy taps. So in that way all the little pieces go like in the middle of the pole. So one thing which I do want to do now, I already grabbed 3 of these little clips. So I do want to secure these plants to the moss pole because I do see that they have a little aerial root growing. So one, this leaf is now a little bit. And I think that's also one thing which I immediately do wanted to discuss, because I have noticed, like especially when plants are younger, they can have a little bit of a hard time rooting into the moss pole. Like I had it happen sometimes that you saw that there was like an aerial root going, and I was still not really sure what happened, but then all of a sudden the aerial root just started to rot away, and maybe it also had to do with the fact that it maybe got a little bit too dry, and that's the reason why the aerial root kind of like shriveled away. So yeah, I think especially for younger plants, it's really important to like help them a little bit. So you can do that by just like really pinning them down to the moss pole, and of course keeping the moss pole really moist. And I do notice with my more mature plants, they are really just, you don't really have to help them anymore. They are just like so strong and grow so robust that, yeah, they find their way into the moss pole. They don't really need that much help anymore. Okay, so this is the finished result. Like I think like the leaves will face a little bit more to the front once I have it in the place where I'm gonna place it. But this is how it is looking now. Just 3 of the propagations on here. Oh, happy to have this one on the moss pole again. Really happy. Okay, now for the last one, the Philodendron Esmeraldense. I do also have another propagation from this one, which also has like a nice new leaf. I also have been thinking like, should I maybe put 2 of them in here, but no, I think I'll just keep it at 1. It's super dry, I noticed, so let's take it out and see how this root system is looking. I think this is the bottom part from my Esmeraldense, yeah, I'm really sure. Also really not sure what happened with this one. This one started to get like really weird markings, like almost black kind of markings, so I'm really not sure what happened with that. So yeah, that's also one which I just took propagations from, and yeah, just starting over now. It has a really big root system though, so I hope it will fit in that pot. Because I don't think that I really have that much bigger pots left. So I'll just make it work. So first need to detangle it a little bit. Another thing which I think is also worth mentioning is like the aesthetics of moss poles. Like I think some people either like or dislike the look of moss poles. I personally kind of like the look of moss poles. I think it gives like really a nature vibe. But there's a but. Because when I just started my moss pole journey, I did put all of my plants on like a 90 centimeter moss pole. Like I basically did everything like how Sydney Plant Guy did it, like the way he made the moss poles, those kind of things. So yeah, at the beginning I did place them all on like a 90 centimeter moss pole. And I quickly did start to realize that I kind of dislike the look of having like such a small plant on the bottom and then like such piece of empty moss pole on top. So what I eventually started to do is also make moss poles from like 50 centimeters, like the ones that I'm using right now. And I personally really like to use it, to do it like that. Like I do understand that you do need to do chop and extends more often than like what you would do with like a 90 centimeters. But I do like the aesthetics of it more than having like such a bare space of moss pole. And sure, it grows and eventually it will fill itself out, but you do going to go to that phase where you just have more moss pole than plant. And still, for some plants which I know they grow really fast, I still put them on like a 90 centimeter, but in the back you can't really see it. I have the Philodendron Lupinum, which I have sold, so I am going to go and ship it later today. But that one is on a moss pole for definitely 2 years, and it's still not on the top of its 90 centimeter moss pole. So yeah, it took a really long time to grow up that pole. Let me see, I think I'm fine with how this is looking. Oh, maybe I should go for a bigger pot though. It's a really big root system. Also quite a lot of roots here in the soil. Well, I think I can make it work by just like placing it in like this. We'll see. This one. It's going to be really crowded in there. Okay, quickly see if it's going to work or not. I think I should really go and see if I have a bigger pot. Yeah, this is not really working because it also has some aerial roots, which I'm pretty sure that if I have them in the soil, they also grow their root system. So yeah, I do need to check if I have a bigger one. So this is better, a little size up. So the moss pole, oh, now I also need to take a little bit of the moss out because this pot is a little bit higher than the other one. Still good. I can't get my hand further in it, so it just has to go how this is looking. So a little layer at the bottom. Like as you can see, yeah, see there are a little couple of aerial roots. So yeah, it's definitely better to have it in this pot so it can grow their own little root system. Yeah, that's definitely better. Oh yeah, that's something which you really need to be aware of. Like if you put plants on moss poles and there are aerial roots, that you don't damage them, because I just because it was falling over to the side, with one of the aerial roots broke off a little bit, but that's fine. Oh, nice to have you back. So here is the finished results. Now I really like, should I have maybe put the other one also in here? Like, well, if I do change my mind, I can also still do that though. I think for now we just keep it like this. So this was already it for the putting the plants on moss poles, and I thought to give a little bit of a sum up. So I think the biggest reasons to consider a moss pole for your plants is if you really want to see it mature and grow big, then I think that's definitely the #1 reason why you should grow your plants on a moss pole, because it definitely works to get your plant to maturity way faster than without a moss pole. And secondly, also for the propagation benefits, there are definitely some propagation benefits for growing on moss poles, especially if you do keep on top of keeping the moss pole moist. And thirdly, I think it's also for just how the plant is growing on a moss pole, because it's growing like against the moss pole, so all the leaves are kind of like facing forwards, and I also feel like on a moss pole the plants are growing way more compact than that they would do without a moss pole. So I think that's not a good reason to grow on a moss pole. So that are definitely my 3 biggest pros on growing on moss pole, like the size of the leaves, the propagation benefits, and just for like a beautiful display. And for the cons, it's that it is something which you do really need to keep on top of. So yeah, you really need to be quite consistent with that. And the second con is that it can be a little bit messy, and that if you have accidents with it, then yeah, you can have quite a domino effect going on, especially if you do have a lot of moss poles. Yeah, I think those were all the things that are kind of a bit of my experience going on moss poles. So I'm really curious, if you are growing a moss pole, what do you find the biggest pros and the biggest cons of growing on moss poles? I'm really curious. So I hope this video has been helpful if you are doubting about starting your moss pole journey. I personally really think that the positives are really outweighing the negative side effects from growing on moss poles. And yeah, I think it's been a really great journey, especially to see my plants mature that much. It's been really, really rewarding to see them grow from that tiny propagation or like a tiny plant to grow into like a really big leaf plant. It's really rewarding to see that happening. So without further ado, I really hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you do have any questions whatsoever, please leave them down below, and I hope to see you in my next video.